Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our final session of the evening. It's been a great day, a lot of terrific sessions and panels and information. And now we're very excited to have with us NFL agent Leigh Steinberg. Leigh, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm going to do a quick introduction of Leigh and then let him take over. Many of you are familiar with Leigh from the work he's done over many, many years in the NFL. Leigh was born and raised in Los Angeles by his parents, a teacher and a librarian. He obtained his undergrad and law degrees from Cal. If you missed his picture on Facebook this afternoon, you can go and look at his Cal t-shirt that he had on when he was student body president during each tenure. Leigh has represented some of the most successful athletes and coaches in football, basketball, baseball, hockey, boxing, golf, etc. Including the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft for an unprecedented 8 times, in conjunction with 64 total first-round picks and 11 Pro Football Hall of Fame players. Leigh has represented other notable athletes such as Oscar De La Hoya and Lennox Lewis, as well as multiple Olympians and professional teams. With an unrivaled history of record-setting contracts, Leigh has secured over $4 billion for his 300-plus pro athlete clients and directed more than $750 million to various charities around the world. Leigh, thank you for being with us tonight. Look forward to hearing your story. People have had a great day hearing from all kinds of athletes, sports executives, philanthropists, and I think it's a great way to cap our first day of Sports Philanthropy World and learn more about the work that you've done with your athletes and how you get them involved with sports philanthropy.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you for putting this all together, because I always think of what we do off the field as God's work, trying to make a positive difference in the world. So as you said, I started back in Berkeley, and most of my experience came from politics. I was student body president when the governor of California was Ronald Reagan, and he and I clashed multiple times. So my training was mostly political. In 1975, I ended up representing Steve Bartkowski, who was a student in my dorm, and he had been drafted #1 overall in the NFL by the Atlanta Falcons, and we negotiated and got the largest rookie contract of all time. And I was all of 25 years old. So we flew into Atlanta, and we flew into the airport the night before the signing, and there were Klieg lights flashing in the sky. The huge crowd was pressed up against the police line, and the first thing we heard was, "We interrupt the Johnny Carson show to bring you a special news bulletin. Steve Bartkowski and his attorney Leigh Steinberg have just gotten to Atlanta. We switch you live for an in-depth interview." Well, I'd grown up in California where we have movie stars and are sort of balanced towards sports, and then I'd gone to Berkeley. But my father raised me with 2 core values. One was to treasure relationships, especially family. And the second was to try to be an agent of change, make a positive difference in the world, and especially help people who couldn't help themselves. So I was looking for a career where I could act out those values. And what I saw was the tremendous idol worship and veneration that athletes were held in communities across the country, how they were the movie stars and they were the celebrities. And I thought that if an athlete would go back and retrace his or her roots to the high school community that helped shape them, to the collegiate community they were part of, and to the professional city they played in, they could design programs that would enhance the quality of life and leave a legacy. And it would be good for them, because the enemy for athletes is self-absorption. Enough about me. Can you talk about how you feel about me? That's self-absorption. And what you're trying to do with athletes is get them to develop their non-athletic skills. So being involved with charity and community was a good way to get them out of that insular world where they could see a much bigger picture and visualize themselves in a much bigger way. So I would sit with each athlete and carefully explain that. And if they weren't interested in being a role model or charitably involved, I wouldn't take them as a client. And we had a large practice over the years in NFL football, Major League Baseball, the NBA, hockey, Olympic athletes, boxers, and all sorts of sports. But basically, it was the same concept: retrace your roots and let's see how we can impact the quality of life. So at the high school level, we have 100 and something scholarships, and the athlete will set up some criteria for someone going on to school. The former quarterback of Houston and Minnesota and Seattle and Kansas City, Warren Moon, set up something called the Crescent Moon Foundation, where he sends hundreds of kids to college on his scholarship. And they've gone on to grad school. He's funded people going through med school, and hundreds of kids have gone to school on his scholarship. Athletes with their high profile have the ability to be role models and trigger imitative behavior. At the collegiate level, Edgerrin James, running back for Indianapolis, went back to the University of Miami and endowed a full scholarship fund. It was about $350,000, and it spun enough interest from that principal to pay for a new athlete each year. Troy Aikman, the quarterback of the Cowboys, went back to UCLA and established a scholarship fund with enough principal, again, to spin the interest off for a new athlete, but he also gave them another $1 million recently. Warren Moon did that at Washington, Steve Young at BYU, Kerry Collins at Penn State, a way of saying this institution shaped me and I'll be part of it. At the professional level, we challenged athletes to find something in their own life that was particularly important to them so they could leave a legacy, and then set up a charitable foundation. One of the first was in 1977 for Rolf Benerschke, who was a field goal kicker for the San Diego Chargers. And his father was in charge of research at the San Diego Zoo. Rolf had a passion for saving endangered species. So we set up a charitable foundation with the leading business figures in that city, the political leadership. So we had the mayor and the Pete Wilson and the sheriff on there. Business figures, so the head of the biggest bank, the head of Southland, which is 7-Eleven, the head of a number of fast food places, were all sitting on our board, and then community leaders, all as a resource base to help establish the foundation and deliver a program. So we called the program Kicks for Critters. And every time Rolf kicked a field goal, he gave money to the Fund for Endangered Species at the San Diego Zoo, and then he challenged people in the community to match at their own level. A big businessman could give $1,000 per field goal, a young kid 50 cents per field goal, and we put together posters and pledge cards that proliferated all throughout San Diego. The first year Rolf kicked a field goal off the flipper of a baby sea lion. And the second year, he kicked one off the hoof of a baby elephant. So these posters and pledge cards, you walked into a 7-Eleven, into a fast food place, into a bank, they were everywhere, to a car dealership. And we ran a Rolfometer in the San Diego Union Tribune. So each week, like on a bar graph, you saw the field goals go up and the money go up. The little kids spun off a program they called Cans for Critters. And so they collected aluminum cans. So it united an entire city. And not only did it raise millions of dollars, it raised consciousness about the cause. The former running back, Ward Dunn, he and I years ago helped set up a program called Homes for the Holidays. And he's just put the 170th single mother and their family into the first home they'll ever own, because his mother was a single mother. And that cause was dear to him. So he did it by making the down payment, moving the family in, and then outfitting it. One of the young men who grew up in one of those houses was the current quarterback of the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson. So it sets up a chain moving forward. Tua Tagovailoa, the new quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, went back and gave $300,000 to his high school in Hawaii. So you have athletes across the country. With Troy Aikman, it was hurt kids that were hooked up in a series of children's hospitals with a TV network they created, which then linked to him so he'd read them bedtime stories. Steve Young did the Forever Young Foundation. So athletes pick something really important to them in their own lives, and we use the power of the community to back those programs. Now, why would a big businessman want to be on the board and help besides charitable reasons? Well, because we gave him a big tchotchke, a big picture of Patrick Mahomes, for example, with his charitable board, with his program called 15 for the Mahomes. And it helps youth charities in Kansas City and Houston, everywhere else. After the first game of the season, he and Deshaun Watson together decided that they would pay for meals for first responders. Patrick also paid for meals for kids who couldn't afford them in Kansas City because of the pandemic and the economic problems. So it's athletes making a difference, and we're well over $1 billion in money raised. In addition, athletes have this power to trigger imitative behavior. So I had the boxer Lennox Lewis cut a public service announcement that said, "Real men don't hit women." And young rebellious adolescents tune out authority figures. They don't want to listen to their parents. They don't want to listen to a teacher. But a big macho boxer can trigger better values when it comes to domestic violence and can change attitudes in kids. Or Oscar De La Hoya, the boxer, and Steve Young, prejudice is foul play. So we used to run all those charities with the athletes running their own charities and their own causes, but we began to run into problems with Better Business Foundation goals to give 80% of the money back to charity. Some of the athletes used their parents. There were problems with taxes. So we went to a different system. Mark Pollock in Los Angeles has the Giving Back Foundation, which is an Uber foundation. So we parked some of the athlete charities under that, and they took care of tax, and they took care of administration and all the rest of it. Kevin Kaplan with his coaching charities, same thing. They take over the administration of the charity itself. We still want the athlete involved so that they're able to make a difference. So this concept comes by finding the right athletes and then trying to talk to them about the longevity of their career and the fact that at a very young age they will be moving into second career and moving away from sports, but that foundation can still live and can still make a difference. I had a father who looked at me and said, son, when you're looking for someone to make a difference in life, as simple as picking something up off the floor and as universal as combating climate change, and you keep waiting for them to do it, they and them, older people, political figures, he'd look at me and say, "You could wait forever. The they is you, son. You are the they." So he raised some activist kids. And in my own life, have been scared about the advent of skinheads and hate groups that are busting our society apart. So I created something called Steinberg Leadership, where in the 30 biggest cities across the country, we train young excuse me, young volunteers, teachers, lawyers, who all committed a year of their time to learning how to help police departments spot skinheads and hate groups, how to go into crisis situations and relieve the tension, and how to go to schools and teach children about cherishing the ethnic differences they have rather than fearing them. And in city across city, with 30 biggest cities in the United States, we set this up. One year we had a conference where Colin Powell came and spoke. This was with the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. Another year we had William Webster, who's head of the FBI or CIA. Well, he was a spook. Anyway, the reality is that these people then went out in the communities and trained other people. So instead of sitting there worrying about my children or any young children being threatened by racial or ethnic or sexual gender or sexual preference, we fought back. Madeleine Albright, who's Secretary of State, asked me if I'd work on a program with her because my brother in the State Department was the head of the Landmines Commission, the U.S. representative to the commission. And these landmines were sitting in countries where they took all the arable or plantable land away and then ended up exploding and causing all sorts of horrible injuries to people. So she and I set up a program called Adopt a Minefield. And what we did was, for $30,000, you could adopt an acre of minefield in Angola or Mozambique or Cambodia, and they would demine, which was pretty extensive, and they would return that land back to the people and change the whole economics and also take the danger out. I ran another program for high school and middle school kids where we took them away for a week and they went to summer camp and they learned leadership skills, but also how to appreciate their background differences. So we're in Orange County, Newport Beach, California. So there were Cambodian and Vietnamese American kids. There were Blacks, Latinos, every kind of background. And they bonded together and got to learn about each other. And they stayed connected over time so that once again, another young cadre for tolerance and respect. So we all can create these programs. We all have the ability to use the high profile of sports. You know, I used to argue with Charles Barkley, who said that parents should be role models, which was a fine thing to say, but it discounted the reality of many homes where there's one parent and one very busy parent. So the truth is these athletes come into people's homes larger than life. If you look at it, something like the National Football League dominates American entertainment. It's not only the most popular sport by 3-1, it's the most popular television show. And every week, 5 of the top 10 shows are that. So if you have this power, the question is how you use it. And the ability to change people's lives tackle issues. So let's take the environment. I posed on my hybrid for Kiplinger's magazine in an edition they did. Warren Moon, Bruce Smith, and I marched in the million-man virtual march on Washington. Warren Moon and I created a ad for Sierra Club, where we promoted environmental causes. So you can really take anything. It could be sex trafficking. It could be domestic violence. It could be racism. It could be a disease. It could be underserved kids. And through cleverly designing programs that understand the fundraising component. Now, I'm talking to the converted already, but what I would tell you is there's two types of foundations. One is where you raise money and then give to the cause itself. And that foundation administers the money in conjunction with the hospital or with some other group. The second is the pass-through concept. And that's something like Patrick Mahomes Foundation, where people apply for grants. And if it has to do with underserved kids, kids in hospitals, any group of kids that's at risk, they will go ahead and donate the money. So this is how I've spent the last 46 years, and we don't really judge ourselves the fact that I've had 64 first-round draft picks or 50 baseball picks or all the money. Somebody would have negotiated those contracts. But if you can stimulate the best values in young men and show them a future predicated on giving back, predicating on care for another, predicated on not cursing the darkness, but lighting candles. It's possible to visualize a better, more wonderful world and to take action to move towards it. And I'm so happy to be talking to all of you today who are all fighters in this field. You're all doing God's work, and I appreciate all of your efforts.
Thank you, Leigh. I think you raised a lot of great issues there. And I think one area I really want to touch on, you talked about the fact that this is something that you've cultivated with your players over the course of many, many years. And it's been a consistent practice of yours to help your players really reach into the community and make an impact, whether it's by scholarships at their high schools, colleges, or in other fashion. One of the things that's always struck me from the football side, especially when you look at the agent community and how few of the agents really get their players set up to make that effort and give back to the community. You see a lot of what I call window dressing, where the agents are setting up a foundation that's truly a shell, and they hand over the paperwork to the player, and they basically say, there you go, Leigh, here you go, here's your foundation. And then they walk away, and the player really has no direction or support. So you look at a group that's got the ability to amplify that impact, the agents certainly are there. So how do we cultivate that spirit of giving back within the agent community?
Well, I wish I could say that idealism and care for the world would be the motivation that would do it, but that's not why most people go into sports agentry. I only judge myself by how successful our athletes are in second career, how fulfilling a life they live, and then what together we've done to make a difference. The first argument I'd make to the agents is that the one about self-absorption, because athletes live in a little homunculus surrounded by other people who think and act the same way they do, and even now more this season, they're actually quarantined. And what you're trying to do is develop the best skill set in athletes. So what you find is the same factors that make you succeed in sports will make you succeed in second career and everything else. And that's self-discipline, abstaining from current pleasure for future satisfaction. It's committing a complex set of information and then employing it in real time. It's teamwork, it's courage under pressure, it's performance under pressure. And all of these are skill sets that an athlete can learn in working with his same foundation. And part of the antidote for all sorts of mental and emotional problems is helping other people. So from that standpoint, I would argue it will help your player be more successful. It will also help your player in second career because he's making relationships and building relationships. I teach the players how to network, how to go to a charitable banquet, walk up for 5 minutes to someone they don't know and ask them for their card. And then write on the back of it so they'll remember, it was a middle-aged man with big boil on his nose who was into plastics, so that they can start putting a Rolodex together. And lastly, I would tell them that the only reason we have professional sports is because of the largesse of millions of fans who watch games on television and go to games themselves and buy all sorts of memorabilia and buy sponsored products. And that all depends on the goodwill that's engendered. So if the sports page reads too much like the business section, or even worse, like the crime beat section, it pushes fans away from sport. So again, if making a self-interest argument, and in this day, it's all about branding. So what is the athlete's brand? So if it's selfish, self-indulgent, criminal, that's not a very good look. And for those athletes who want to do endorsements, today the currency is social media followers. And they're very carefully logged. How many followers does someone have on Instagram? How many followers on Twitter? How many followers on Facebook? How many followers on every form of social media, LinkedIn? So you encourage the athletes to reach out in all of those ways. So what's a brand? A brand is how many people can mention or recall this athlete's name, but then what are the adjectives that are affixed to it? So when I had Paxton Lynch, who was a quarterback, now on Pittsburgh, I took his values, faith, family, friendship, and football, put them into a hashtag, and every time we mentioned him, those were the values we mentioned, because if you like those values or you have a symmetry with them, then you have an identification with them. So I would say in marketing, you can have high brand, but then the next question is, do people like you? Are they attracted to you or what you stand for? And in that situation, the running back Ray Rice had high brand. The tight end Aaron Hernandez had high brand. They had huge name recognition, but was negative. So if you think of Patrick Mahomes, because this is who he is, I want you to think that if you like him on the field, you'll like him more off the field. And he has a big heart and compassion and cares about people and spends his Tuesdays, off days, going to fire departments and children's schools and children's hospitals. Those are good values. Those are good, strong, wholesome activities. Those are things that give you the greatest gift of all, which is knowing you've helped someone else.
So when you talk about that gift and that brand, I think the struggle still becomes your athletes are lucky to have somebody like you to help guide them through that. When you look at when many of them come through college, most of the colleges and universities have not spent a lot of time preparing the athletes for that type of function. I think that will change a little bit over the next 5 to 10 years with the name, image, likeness type of opportunities. But then beyond that, you get to the professional teams that historically also have engaged the players through the team's initiatives instead of getting the players to cultivate their own initiatives. So if in fact the agents aren't going to do it, the universities aren't going to do it, the teams aren't going to do it, how do we take a community like we have here through the Sports Philanthropy Network and the people that work in this space? What's the best way for organizations to engage with an athlete and get them interested in a cause and find out what that athlete's passion is?
Well, one way is if you're a fellow alum of a athlete. There's a certain synergy there that can open something up. Someone in the athletic department can make that contact. Someone in that athletic department will have worked with the pro athlete. Additionally, agents. So my hope is, because we keep running agent academies and sports career conferences where we train people and tell them that they should make a difference when they get into sports, that you'll simply find more of those people. In addition, at the college level, what happens is that young athletes on many campuses across the country are given life skills courses. And they're taught about how to manage money, and they're taught about everything from basic etiquette, and they're taught about involvement in the community. So another thing to do is research someone in high school or college and see what they've done. If you find out they've taken a trip to Haiti to help bring water in a COVID time, then you're probably looking at the right athlete. So what we do in clients is to profile them. So the best bet anyone here has is to profile the athlete. Go look them up on Google, read about anything they've done. You might be surprised by how much they've done in high school. The community relations person at a team or the PR person at a team usually has a close relationship with the athlete. So if you can sell the community relations person on the reason, then you can go ahead and do that. Now, my mail is flooded every single day with outreach from people that want to work with a specific athlete or with any athlete that we just signed him. And remember this, every single pro athlete has some brand. The fact that they're related, they don't have to be the biggest stars. Because they all were stars in their own high school community and the college community. And if you're in Chicago and, you're going to go straight from here to watch the Bears play the Rams tonight. If you were in Chicago, any Bear is going to have some draw to them. They can wear their uniforms. The truth of the matter is, we're all not experts. We can't name 53 players on that team or 26 on a baseball team. Any Bear is going to have some pop. Any Chicago Bull. Here in Southern California, any Dodger. So you can get to them through their athletic department. You can get to them through their social media. You can get to them through their agent. And many of them have assistants that they hire full-time that you can find and get to. And they're all good. You need to know how to use an athlete's time so that whatever it is that you want from them, whether it's filming something, going somewhere, is structured in a way where they know what the expectations are. And then to be considerate of them. If we're pushing a charity, Are they going to need to sign autographs? Are they going to need to sign to pose for pictures and make sure there's a comfort level with that? We send everyone, someone from our office to most of these different events. And the other thing I can tell you about charitable fundraising is a banquet, live auction, silent auction. Okay. So if you're going to ever have a silent auction where the goods are all laid out there ahead of time for people to walk around and sign up with, I go through the silent auction for a athlete we represent, and I sign my name on every single one of the pieces of paper. We are social animals. If no one has bid on an item, then no one's going to bid on the item because you get that sense. So if you're working with a charity or philanthropy, make sure that it looks like there's activity and action. One of my great skills in life is being in a live auction and bidding on an athlete's, a different athlete's item as they go up, but you have to be careful that you don't end up buying every item, for hundreds of thousands of dollars. One time, Jake Plummer, a quarterback, was someone had drawn the ugliest picture I've ever seen of him in his life, and they were auctioning it off. So Vince Vaughn, the actor, was there, and he'd been having a few pops. So he started bidding against me. And I got the 1,000, he was at 2, and I got the 3, and he was at 4, and I got the 5,000, he was at 6, 7, 8, 9, anyway. At 9,000, I quit. And at 10,000, he bought it, and he loped up on the stage. He was so excited. And he said, Leigh, I beat you for this. I beat Jerry Maguire. Blah, blah, blah. And then he said, but I know how much you wanted this. Is the artist still here? And he said, and the artist was there, and he said, can you do another one? So for $10,000, locked somewhere in a dark, dank dungeon, this is the ugliest picture I've ever seen. But, familiarize yourself with what are the most effective ways of fundraising. So what happened is that it was golf tournament after golf tournament, with banquets, with live auctions and silent auctions. And then people started to realize that if you had 10 quarterbacks at one, then you had to have 10 quarterbacks at the other, and you had to find a sponsor to somehow fly the people there and then put them up at a hotel, and all of a sudden there's not much money left over. So people went to things like bowling tournaments. So creativity is important.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about the golf tournaments and the memorabilia, I think one of the challenges is for people who are around that space, you see the same types of memorabilia at many different events. There's a limit for most people to the number of items that they can have at their house, that they can display in their basement, their office, wherever they like to have those things. When you look at what's going on right now with COVID, obviously many of these events are not happening. Many of these outings are not occurring, or certainly the dinners and the auctions, if anything, they're taken online. So what are you seeing as some new ideas and new strategies for the players to be able to raise money without the live event options?
Zoom events. So just like you're having today. So there have been a variety of bidding banquets. You have to be careful to design some sort of an interesting way to get people there. The worst thing is, the best way to get a huge number was two wealthy people who had a lot to drink that night at the banquet, and getting them in one-on-one competition with each other. I actually was sold for lunch for 25,000 and then another 25,000. But you can get two people bidding against each other. The best events are the ones that are experiences you couldn't have another way. playing one-on-one basketball with someone, going to a game with someone, being on the sidelines of a game, being a broadcaster for a day, being part of a color for a day. It's things that you couldn't ordinarily experience. It's what we do all the time with people close to our practice. So, and you can't do as much of that as you could before. But look, someone came up with the idea for the water challenge, right? Where you dump water on your head. And people have come up with clever gimmicks and ideas. So it's brainstorming, Roy. It's putting together what appeals to, and you have to look at your audience to see what it is. A Refrigerator Perry jersey might go for $5,000 in Chicago. It might go for $200 in Jacksonville. So you have to understand and know who your audience is. But real experiences now, potentially you can do some of them virtually. So there's still things you can do.
So you've talked about some of the best practices of how people can work with athletes. Talked about the volume of mail that you get for people having requests, and I know from teams and people at the community relations departments, they often express frustration with the number of requests that come in for the star player without even understanding what issues they're connected to. So as requests come into you from an organization who wants to work with one of your athletes, what are the quickest ways for them to turn you off or turn the athlete off? What goes automatically in the no pile?
A dramatic ask that assumes that the athlete is not doing anything else. Anything that is more personal, where someone has done research on us or the athlete and understands. So Patrick Mahomes has two pit bulls. So someone from the ASPCA did something about dogs, and so we knew he'd be interested in it. It's understanding what the background is. If someone's lost a parent, or there's been a suicide, or there's been some dramatic activity, can you personalize that in a way that appeals to that individual athlete? There are athletes that care about sickle cell anemia research because someone in their family's had it, or hypertension. If you will actually research the athlete, some of the brightest and most articulate athletes aren't the biggest stars. So you want to see, but they still deliver a pop and a punch. And so the turnoff is someone who's hyper demanding without motivating it, without explaining why this is valuable and why you think it would appeal to that athlete.
And I can only imagine how many requests you get that fit in that category. I know just on a much smaller scale, the number of people that come looking for Super Bowl tickets and other favors just because you work around the sports business. So, Leigh, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight and sharing your insight. Congratulations on all the great work that you're doing and the leadership that you show for your players. It's great to see Patrick having that success. I know got Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams with the Packers. You've got Tua, got big crowd going on. So keep up the great work.
And thank you for putting this group together, because all of us have the opportunity to make a difference and have our life on this planet that stood for something more powerful than just self-aggrandizement. And everyone on this who is coming to this conference is my type of people, and you are too.
Well, thank you very much, Leigh. We appreciate your time and participation. Before we let everybody go tonight, I want to just make a couple of quick announcements. We've got some exciting news tomorrow. We start with our pop pitch competition with 3 organizations that are going to present to judges in terms of their nonprofits that they're getting started. Fight Like a Girl, Teamwork for Cancer, and Spring Football League. So come back at 9 o'clock Central tomorrow morning to see those pitches and see how we can help them get their projects off the ground. We've got a great keynote at lunchtime with Diane Billings-Burford from RISE. And she's going to be joined by former NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue for a special conversation. And then we'll close the evening with David Meltzer tomorrow night. And in between, we've got some phenomenal panels with social entrepreneurs. We've got media. We've got teams and leagues. And we've got players that are fulfilling their career in philanthropy, as well as all of our breakout sessions. So I want to thank everybody for a fantastic day 1 of Sports Philanthropy World. Leigh, thank you for sharing your time with us. And to all of our participants, we really appreciate your time and effort. And we look forward to having you join us again tomorrow. Thank you.